Good to go.
All right, we're live. All right, let's get this Zoom meeting started. Our third one. I'm Bob Flounders at PennLive. Joining me, Greg Pickel, my fellow Penn State beat writer for PennLive, and our special guest this week, I think a real treat, one of the greats on the Penn State beat, Neil Rudel of the Altoona Mirror. Neil, I just wanted to say welcome. Thanks for doing this. But I was on Twitter just before we got on here, and I heard you got an irate voicemail from somebody who he used some dirty words. I guess he was worried about you prank calling him. What's the deal there?
That was one of the funniest voicemails. You know, I end up getting I joke with my great friend Dan Slepp here at the Mirror, whose family founded the company in like he's like fifth generation. He's a circulation manager. So, you know, I joke with him, I'm like the backup junior assistant circulation manager in waiting, because I seem to get a lot of, why didn't I get my paper? I called downstairs, nobody was there. I'll call up here. I don't know what it was, whether somebody got a call that they didn't want and ended up with me. So I never called. I don't know who the guy was, but he swore at me, and I thought it was funny.
Yeah, at least you didn't use profanity back. So that was a feather in your cap. Hey, so Neil, just your thoughts. I know we talked with Mark Brennan, a good buddy of yours.
Yeah.
We talked with Ryan Snyder, but just your thoughts on what the last 6 weeks have been like. I know that you've seen a lot and you've heard a lot and you've read a lot on the Penn State beat. This is obviously extraordinary times, but you know, a lot of people are just unsure about the future of sports in this country. There doesn't seem to be a lot of information out there as far as how they're going to move ahead. But what do you think about? What are your thoughts maybe on late summer and fall with regard to sports returning, and especially college football and Penn State?
Yeah, I just think there's so many uncertainties. It's almost like day to day, week to week. And I saw yesterday they said they kind of bumped it back to at least maybe a decision will be closer by around June 1st. I just don't know. I think when when this cloud lifts, I think while we're all going to be anxious to get our lives back, I just don't know. I think it's going to be a real gradual, guarded way of moving ahead with your life. And I just don't know, after you've been told that, you know, I mean, we're in an empty nest. Just Diana and I was like kind of playing chess, and you know, I just don't. You go from just really just you and your spouse or your very small circle to 110,000. That's going to be a pretty big leap. I don't know what the backup plans are. I mean, I think the big thing is, will they bring the students back to campus? And they've already said if they don't do that, they're probably going to have to look for an alternate plan. But I just don't know whether life as we have known it, shaking hands with anybody and everybody that you're just introduced to for the first time, all the, you know, the little hugs of, you know, your great friends, all you guys that we haven't seen for how long in person. I just don't know how quickly that's going to take to be normal again. I think it's going to be a gradual, guarded process.
Greg, you have a question for Neil you'd like to ask? No recruiting questions for Neil. That's not his area of specialty.
Who's your first pick in the Survivor poll? I think there is going to be an NFL
season. Yes, we'll be there before long. Neil, did you get to watch the Fiesta Bowl re-air last Friday night? Did you get to take in any of that? And you know, you've covered this team, this beat for so long. Nothing obviously compares to what's going on now. But any interesting spring stories you can think back to that would, of course, be normal, abnormal in a football sense, not necessarily a global health sense?
You know, I'll admit I have not been on a lot of the conference calls with the assistant coaches. I'm supposed to be on with James tomorrow with you guys. And I think it is smart what Penn State is doing. I think the exposure, and even in normal times, the Thursday window, the assistant coaches availability, I think it helps those guys, and it's great for us. the information flow. And I think right now it keeps Penn State out in the forefront. You know, every newspaper needs headlines. I don't know, you know, with you guys at the Patriot, but we're digging out like an archive story every day, turning back the clock that our older readers have liked. You know, I didn't get the idea that James was ever really super crazy about the blue-white game, and I think a lot of these coaches don't want to risk any kind of injury. It's a day for a lot of the walk-ons, and that's unfortunate that has been lost. You know, and the other challenge, I think, is so many new coaches in new positions for Penn State. So how is that going to all blend? You know, but James, I think, is very slick with technology. Maybe we'll have an advantage on some of the other top programs trying to maximize this window. I'm sure they're doing the best they can, and probably better than some other places, you know, with their Zoom and their meeting and their accountability, you know, with these players. I just wonder, you know, left to their own devices in their own communities, you know, hey, a lot of these kids probably don't have the same benefits training table wise. And,
Right.
You know, James talks often about sleep and nutrition and lifestyle. And so I just think it's going to be a real big transition when they eventually do get everybody back on the same page. You did mention the '87 Fiesta Bowl, and I think that was perfect timing for Penn State fans. Just desperate for a dose of something interesting. So I watched it. I wanted to make sure Penn State won. And I actually wrote something that was in the paper today. Just a lot of cool notes. And John Schaefer and Mike Tirico, the way they dissected it, and Jimmy Johnson, you know, there's been a 30 for 30 on him. I mean, he's called it the worst game he ever coached. You know, the most devastating time of his life. Boy, that Miami had so much talent. And there they are. They threw 50 passes. I'd like to know what the career record of any quarterback who threw 50 passes in one game is.
Yeah, that's crazy, Neil. But I know a lot of people that I know that are Penn State fans. They really, that was a very pleasant distraction for them on a Friday night. It felt a little bit more normal. And I think if you put that game on, you know, 5 days a week, I think Penn State fans, especially some veteran Penn State fans, will probably watch that game and get just as excited in the second half, especially late in the game. But Neil, we have
the defensive performance and Shane Conlon. You know, I mean, I know he had a great game, but I guess I didn't realize. You know, you're at the game, you're sitting in the press box, you know, way up top, and at that time, Bob, I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, I think there were 2 monitors in the press box. And one happened to be right above me, sandwiched at the far right of the second row, and one was at the way end of the, you know, we didn't have the technology and luxury. Even the game graphics were, you know, pretty Spartan. I noticed at one point in the game, I mean, Penn State's offense was so bad early that they actually edited out some of the plays. I started to rewind it, you know, Penn State gets the ball, and all of a sudden then Miami has it deep in its own territory. So, yeah, it was fun.
Neil, so you mentioned Shane Conlon in that defense. We have you as our guest. So I wanted to ask you, you know, if you had to come up with a list of 4 or 5 of the best Penn State defensive players you've seen, what would that list look like? And I'm leading into it with this. How close? It doesn't have to be 5, even if it's 3. But is Micah Parsons starting to creep up, maybe on that list of 5 or 6 guys, or do you still think you need to see him play for another year at a high level?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's shown he has that potential. I mean, Conlon's individual effort and the whole team's defense, but when he was injured in the first quarter and he gets an interception. I mean, the sure-handed cuts to the outside, weaves his way back to the left, hurdles his way down to the 5. It was really almost the only way they were going to put that offense in a position to score. The offense made one drive the whole game. So he would be on it, I think. I mean, Arrington, for his sheer, just incredible athletic ability, jumping over the Illinois line. But, hey, the team underachieved at that time. So, would he be on that list? Courtney Brown was tremendous. I'd have to put Bruce Clark on the list. I mean, Bruce Clark was such a physically dominating player. He and Matt Millen, wouldn't be fair for me to talk about Mike Reed. I covered him post-career, but I did not see him play, or Jack Ham. But I think all these guys would be in the conversation, when you talk about championship, great players, first-round picks on championship teams. And I'm sure we're missing somebody, but, in that front seven. And the way Parsons played against Memphis, I think really began to whet the appetite. His pursuit, he did it all. And, you guys being Harrisburg guys, I'm sure played particular attention, but I thought he was outstanding.
Neil, give us the worst Big Ten place to visit and why, and the best place to get something to eat in the Big Ten.
Oh, man. Well, Rich Scarcella sometimes leads a contingent into St. Elmo. Okay? But, I think once you do that once and you have the shrimp cocktail and the real hot sauce, that's an experience to go in Indianapolis. But, the worst place to visit, Rutgers really gets a bad rap. I actually don't mind the Rutgers-Maryland relationships because selfishly, and a lot of, you can drive there, a lot of Penn State fans, I think Nebraska is a tremendous place to go to see a game. Their fans are just outstanding. A lot of sportsmanship there, maybe because they don't have a pro team or whatnot. I always enjoyed that. Ohio State, I don't know that it's the favorite place of a lot of Penn State fans. It could be, pretty entitled, just as when Ohio State has come here. But I'd say Nebraska, Iowa, these Midwestern towns, they had many years ago, they had this Lark Supper Club that they took the visiting media at Iowa once a year. And when Penn State was welcomed into the Big Ten, so this probably would have been 93. And I'm talking about like a huge steak, almost a whole wedge salad at this place. And it was kind of a tradition. I think the place eventually burned down, but Iowa had a really great, very welcoming place with the media. And I do remember the Lark Supper Club in Iowa.
So Neil, you talked about life on the road. I think for a lot of younger Penn State fans who might be listening to this, they're not aware of this, but could you just share some of your memories, because you got to experience it more than a lot of people. And that's not saying that you're an old man by any standards, but you were part, Neil, of a very interesting time where the late Joe Paterno would meet with the media on Friday nights. And it wasn't, towards the end, it felt a little forced, and maybe his heart wasn't in it, and he was an older man. But, maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, back when, he probably had a little bit of a better relationship maybe with the press. I think it was, listening to, Ronnie Crisp tell me about it and Dave Jones tell me about it, just a fascinating give and take the night before a game. What was that like for you? And can you kind of just talk a little bit about I don't think a lot of the fans realize how kind of really memorable those experiences were.
Yeah, and really, to be honest, I was about in the middle of it, because when I first came into that situation, and in the early years, this was how Penn State football, appealed to the media. The old stories of, Jim Tarman, Fran Fisher, these guys would take a suitcase full of liquor into a hospitality suite to try to create hospitality and to showcase Joe, who was really good in those types of settings, build relationships with particularly the Eastern and Philadelphia media, and get more coverage for Penn State football. Get it into the New York and the Philadelphia papers. And so they began this history on Friday night, home and away. The home sessions were mainly for the out of town writers, so we wouldn't attend those. But as the years went on, the road was something that it got Joe out of the lobby. He enjoyed the give and take. It was understood that it was off the record, and that was a little bit of a journalistic collide, because you weren't 100% comfortable. I remember one year at Notre Dame, he said, he looks at everybody and said, "Well, you guys would know we're banged up tomorrow. We're banged up right now." And what that meant, like maybe the quarterback wasn't going to play, or DJ Dozier wasn't going to play, and you're sitting out there. Your paper has sent you out to get whatever story, cover the game. So you felt a little compromised. So, it give you information. You had to be careful how you used it. You tried to use it subtly, at least let the reader know that, hey, there's, they're not 100%, or you might have been able to even slip it in. Now, this was before the days where any tweet would have run rampant everywhere. So you could get the information kind of back to your paper to get whatever tidbits. So, but you also felt it was important to be there, to find out what you could, to get a sense of what was going on, and to build a little more relationship with Joe, to let him get familiar with who you are. And maybe that would help at some point too. So it was very unique. I don't know that anybody else was doing it at that level. Certainly not the NFL guys. And these guys all have regular beats where about the same guys been covering for years. But Joe built that rapport, and we had a lot of laughs. We roasted Ronnie Christ on his last. So people stood up, and there was a lot of fellowship. Hey, we were all competitive, trying to get a story, but he understood that, and he would come and hang out for the better part of an hour. It could be 40 minutes, could be an hour and a half. Something might be on TV. He didn't really want to be the center of attention, was, right. And people would ask him questions. And in the early years, Ronnie was there. You'd go in, and Mark Brennan knows this, we've talked about it. You'd kind of go in and sort of meld into the scenery. It was older people at that time. George was there. George was tremendous on Friday night. Bud Tallman. And you'd learn. You learned how things were. You learned a lot of the history, the stories. And it just was, it was unique. To me, it was valuable. And we all had a lot of fun.
Neil, speaking of unique, you have the designation of being called a wet blanket at times by James Franklin, and I don't think anybody else has that opportunity.
He doesn't know me well.
Have you
that
missed
was great when you said that.
Have you missed a spring of that? And what do you think the future of these? You talk about what the past coach media player relationship might be like. What do you think the future holds?
Well, I think, and just an extension. I think that James has done a good job, with a great job overall. But in terms of the media relations, we have a little bit more access than we had before. People can go to practice for a little while on Wednesday. Bill O'Brien did that Friday night for a year out of respect to the guys and the tradition. And, he'd have a couple beers and some real laughs. And then at the end of the year, whether he was leaving then, or he wasn't leaving quite yet, but maybe we didn't know that, or maybe he didn't know that. But he said at the end of the first year, he said, this has been great, but I am tired on Friday night. Yeah. I'm not going to be able to do this next year. But we all wished him well, and appreciated it. James has not done that. And, hey, that was something that kind of ran its course. I think, the access, which is really a big part of what our job is. How much access can you get? Can you get an occasional one-on-one with somebody if you ask for it, if you can? And it's hard because the beat is so much bigger than it was back when Ronnie and Nick Horvath and some of the greats from Harrisburg. And I mean, you guys have had tremendous beat coverage for so long. So much respect for you guys. I think that, James has done well with that, keeping everybody in the loop. This is at least his second or third availability in a spring with no football. I mean, there might have been times that that we went from, say the morning after was a nice tradition with Joe from the bowl game, which they don't have now. And, things have changed. We get that. But there might have been times when we might not have heard from him from January 2nd until literally March 20th. Yeah. So there's I think there's better access. And they've also seen what the access can do for them.
Neil, let's close with this. I'll ask you a two-part question. How close do you think, realistically, Penn State really is to Ohio State? What's been the difference the last couple of years? And on a lighter note, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, do you have, and I might be selfish just asking this, do you have a favorite David Jones story, either from the road or from a home press box or just an interaction with Dave? If you don't, that's okay. I'm sure you have too many, maybe even to pin it down, but a serious question for you about Ohio State and maybe a not so serious one to close out.
I thought it was the other way around. I'm just, I don't know that Penn State is quite there. Like, the predictions are going to roll around here. You're going to have to make one soon of what this season's going to be. And to me, if you pick anything worse than say 11-1, then I think you're looking at, you're in the middle of the road if you have a 10-2 season. You're being pessimistic if it's 9-3,
right,
and you're being real optimistic if you're at 11-1. I think there'll be some 11-1s that come in. I think they're built for that. To me, their road schedule is going to play tough. Who knows? Presuming everything's equal and there is a full season, but going down to Virginia Tech, and I don't want to get too far off the track because you asked about Ohio State. You look at the NFL draft; it's just unbelievable what you see. From Ohio State year in and year out. I know Penn State, his cumulative numbers have been impressive, but as far as the top level guys, the fact that I know they've been competitive, but I think Ohio State will have this game circled, and that'll be a season definer for Penn State. And even if Penn State can win that, can they win all the other ones then and be that elite program? And I thought Clifford kind of leveled off at the second half of the year. And all the new people in new places, I think those are some of the biggest question marks to whether they can close that gap. I mean, Dobbins was great, but boy, Fields is somebody special, and they always is. KJ Hill is finally gone, right?
Yes. So, yes, he went the 7th round of the draft. Go figure.
Dave has been such a great pro on the beat, and I mean, and there are times when I joke about hey, get off the stage a little bit during the press conference. We say that here when somebody's just getting a little carried away. But hey, I just admire Dave. He can get a lot of people on the phone. He's a really brilliant writer. Now he gave Ronnie Christ a bowling ball for his going away present. We found out Ronnie doesn't bowl. But that'd be one. We roasted Dave for his 40th. He had some of his old, guys that he used to work with came in, and guys on the beat. And Dave, Dave's made it he's made it very interesting, football and basketball.
I would agree with that 100%. Well, Greg Pickel, Bob Flounders here. We had Neil Rudel of the Altoona Mirror, a Penn State beat great, joining us for this conversation. I really enjoyed it. Neil, stay safe. I hope I get to see you soon. I'll be watching to see your interaction with James Franklin tomorrow. Hopefully you don't get the wet blanket treatment. I don't think you will,
No.
but it's a fair point. He did call you wet blanket once, and Greg, good call to remember that.
Hey, good being with you guys. Thank you.
All right, take care.
All right.